walking in, the salt truck was throwing salt, and it made me think of the parable of the sower sowing seed. Maybe Jesus could have done one of someone sowing salt to keep us safe. It'd just be a whole nother image. But the image I want us to think about real briefly this morning is the one of the desert and how that relates. We use it in Lent anyway. We heard it in the first reading, right? And again, how quickly when people get fearful, they long for the good old days, right? Oh, why'd you take us from Egypt? You do remember that we were property in Egypt, right? We were slaves. We didn't even have freedom. But they're so racked with fear, that doesn't even occur. Oh, the good old days, right? That story goes on and on. We used to have flesh pots, and we sat around the fire, and you were property. Like, they killed you at will. You're so full of fear, you're missing it. And this is the thing about the image of the desert. Even Jesus in the desert. It takes away from us the image, however you want to look at it, whether you've physically been to a desert, or whether we use the discipline of Lent, or the reality of our lives. When the physical supports are taken away, it just takes us to a space of vulnerability. We have to confront it. We have to think about it. We have to look at what works in our lives or what doesn't. We see the dependence. We have to move deeper into a trust of God, or not, or we let ourselves be filled with fear, and that just becomes the driving space of our life, fear. Right? There's the choice. But when we go to the desert, whether figuratively in a season of Lent, or whether we take the things that come into our lives that give us that opportunity and space, we have to do that difficult work in that space. I've told many stories from my time in Bolivia, and the one that I'll go back to a billion times is when there was a young man that I was studying with. I was studying Spanish there. And he was from Boston, and he planned all these trips. And it wasn't until we were in the middle of this trip, and I tell it because it was literally a desert, but it was also a very scary experience. It's one of the few times in my life I was pretty sure I wasn't going to live. And I had Keegan to thank for that. I'll never forget him for taking me to that place where I really thought I was going to die. But it's that fine example of there were no physical supports, food, water, all those kinds of things, that you then have to really confront the vulnerability. And if you ever get a chance to go there, highly recommend it. There's dinosaur prints in the dirt, and there's cave drawings from people from thousands and thousands of years ago. It's really one of the more unique national parks in the world. And at its lowest point, it's higher than Denver. And at its highest point, it's over 12,000 feet. And so you can't breathe. It's very much a struggle. And I remember we had climbed the mountain. And, you get an altitude sickness, and it just felt terrible. And we come down, and our guide had run out of water. And it was like, man, we paid you to make sure we'd be okay. And then I'm like, okay, are we done for the day? Nope, we got more to do. And we're walking, and it's hot, and it's really arid there, so you're dehydrating. And we get to this station, and this lady's selling a refresco. Sounds so nice, doesn't it? Refresco. And we get there, and I buy 3 of them. And as she hands me these cups and ladles out of this big metal container, what hits that cup, this little plastic cup, is hot. It's hot. And then I find out it's corn refresco. So think corn-flavored Kool-Aid is really what this is. And it's hot, like hot tea hot. And you're hot. I'm like borderline hallucinating, and you're just like, thank you. But I remember it, I can smell it, I can taste it, and I can hear myself grumbling, is like the great biblical expression, in my head for how awful this was. But I had been stripped of the support. I didn't get to choose what it was I was going to have. And I don't have time to explain what happened next, but that was the closest I've ever felt to death. We went down into this cave. It's over 2 kilometers, and it goes down, almost like 900 feet underground. You're so far underground, it's actually really hot. You're starting to get a little too close to the core of the earth, and it's dark, and it was really tiny spaces, and I'm just a tad claustrophobic. And at every step, I had no idea where we were going and how much longer this was going to be. It was like 2.5, 3 hours underground in darkness, and you're wet and dirty, and I'm needing confession for the swearing and all the, it was terrible. And I really was at several spots like, I think I'm going to die here. They're not even going to take my body out of here. This is a third world country. There are no safety nets down here. There's no, anyway, has anyone ever died down here? It was a horrifying experience. that I love to tell the story of now because I survived it, right? But the physical supports were gone. I was not in control. I was at the mercy of this little Boliviano who I could barely understand, and he was much smaller, so because when he would go through these little holes, I'm like, well, sure, at 5'2", there's no problem for you. And so what of us? What are the things that come to us? Lent is easy because we get to pick it. St. Francis de Sales once said, the crosses you choose to bring to your life are a lot easier than the crosses that come to you. Right? I was asking our parents here of Lucas, like, is this your first child? Because people, like, your first child, you're like, whoa, what are we doing? Are we, do we know what we're doing? And all the physical supports go away. But no, this is their third child. So they went from man-to-man defense to zone defense now, right? And Mom makes the great point. Yeah, coffee and adrenaline is what's running this morning. The physical supports go away. All these things teach us about the reality of life. We don't choose many of them. Sure, we maybe chose to give up donuts or something. That's cute, and we can cheat on Sundays if we want, right? But a new life in your lap, you don't get to choose. This is the depth of the experience. And it can take you to fear, or it can take you to fullness of life. That's what Jesus revealed in his own desert experience. It's what he reveals in the cross and in his resurrection, is to say that. He didn't choose that in that sense, right? He didn't choose that. His cross, and again, one sense he freely chooses it because he has this dependence and trust on God. And I don't know why it is that way, brothers and sisters, but there is a deep connection between the suffering and the redemption. And I'll never understand why they chopped apart Paul's piece of this letter, Romans 5. Because to me, it's the crux of living the faith. What he said that's not in this pericope, and I don't know why, was, and not only that, we boast in our suffering, because suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, character produces hope, and hope does not disappoint. There's no other way except down that map, down that path, down that cave, down this journey with a new life, in our journeys together. All of it in its beautifulness and ugliness and its dirtiness, and the struggle to connect and to belong, and the struggle to understand each other, that messiness, that's not on the side, it's straight down the middle for us. We can't do it alone, we never have and we never will. In this Eucharist is his presence to strengthen us, to trust more deeply that in his journey through the passion, that through his journey from death to new life, suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, character produces hope. And it's the very hope that we will baptize Lucas Marquette in, right? Brene Brown once said that, like, many ways we want to shield young people from suffering and from struggle, and yet we're hardwired for it. And so what we baptize him in is our faith. And our faith is a journey. And we surrender to that. We let go of the physical supports that we can't control. Right? When we lose power, that's probably when we most all experience it at once, right? When we lose power and we get a little cranky. Wait, what do you mean? Where's the generator? Why didn't we ever buy a generator? Here we are. There's no insurance that we can lay down for that, except the insurance that is this man saying to us, I am the way, the truth, and the life. The way, the truth, and the life. Just a few minutes, we're going to take Lucas Marquette back to the baptismal font and lead him on the way to truth and life. And we will journey with him and his family together in that experience of our faith. What a gift. What an opportunity. We didn't choose it. Maybe you came in this morning when Michael said we're doing a baptism. You're like, oh, goodness, an extra 10 minutes of Mass. You didn't choose it. Maybe you knew, maybe you didn't. But here we are. It's a wonderful opportunity to have in this liturgy, because from death comes new life. In this Eucharist, we will move forward. There's more and more daylight every day. There's more and more opportunity as we journey through Lent to think about the disciplines and the physical supports we've set aside, because those are the practice for us to do the difficult work, to become a more cleaner and more powerful reflection of the light of Christ we all need. May God be praised.